Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. I hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, thank you very much, and I'm so glad you've joined me for part 2 of our story tonight. It's a very, very exciting story and you don't want to miss out on it. So this is part 2, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's continue with part 2 of our story. "After all I've done for you, Iris," my mother shrieked objectionably, rather like a banshee, "you repay me by failing like this. You've brought shame on this family, Iris. I hope you're proud of yourself. What on earth will people think when they hear that my daughter has flunked college? It's so humiliating. That is what it is. Mrs. Peterson's 2 daughters are well on their way to getting degrees in science and math, I believe. And oh, you! I just can't bear to look at you, Iris. You are a bitter disappointment to me. I've had enough of you. Enough, do you hear me?" she said, throwing her arms up in exasperation. "I knew the moment you left home, Iris, that you would come apart at the seams without me helping you out. Oh, I can't believe it. I so wish I was wrong about you. But you know what your problem is, Iris? You're so bone lazy. If it weren't for me, you'd have never succeeded at school. But I'm not paying for you anymore. I'm just not. You flunked college, and you're going to go out into the big bad world yourself now, and make a go of things all on your own, without our financial support. Then see how easy it is. Me and your father, we've washed our hands of you from now on. And I mean that in a biblical way, Iris." For a moment my mother gave me a delighted retaliatory smirk. "You're going to realize, Iris dear, that it is not pretty out there by any manner of means, when you actually have to fend for yourself to make a living, which is what you're going to have to do from now on without our help. I hope you will begin to appreciate, Iris dear, what me and your father have done for you over the years, which you have clearly taken for granted. I want you to get your things now and go. I'm giving you 30 minutes to get the hell out of our home, and I don't want to see you again. I am bitterly disappointed in you, and don't you dare come back to our home begging for any help, if everything goes sour for you. You brought this on yourself, my girl, so don't expect to receive our pity." "But where will I go?" I protested, tears spilling down my cheeks. "Mum, you can't just throw me out like this. That's not fair. I'm still your daughter. I'm sorry. I messed up. I admit it. But give me a second chance. Let me retake college, and this time I will make you proud," I said, looking contrite. "I'm sorry, Iris. It's too late to redeem yourself now. There are no second chances in my household. You made a joke of college, drinking and partying away all the time. I can't forgive you for that. You need to grow up, Iris. You need to learn to be self-sufficient. It's exactly what you need. Sometimes the hard lessons in life will knock some sense into you, make something out of you. When I was a girl, I didn't have the advantage of college on my side. My parents couldn't afford it. But I had more grit and steel than you have in your tiny little finger. I wasn't afforded the privileges you were given, but you threw them right back in my face, and I cannot accept that, not for a moment." My impassionate mother stood outside my bedroom, her face cold, hard, and unyielding. She watched me fill 2 forlorn, pathetic, rather battered-looking suitcases with my worldly possessions, which I crammed in tightly. Once I'd packed my cases, my red-faced father took me to one side privately when my mother wasn't looking. He generously slipped $2,000 into my hands, looking ruefully apologetic. In a low, chagrined voice he told me he was sure my mother would come around eventually. "You know what your mother's like, Iris," he said compunctiously. "She's devastated you flunked college. She's taken it rather hard, but give her time, love, and I'm sure she'll come round, and then you can come back home," he said. When I left the house, I tried to call my mother on numerous occasions to make amends with her, but she brazenly blocked my number, and for a mother to do that, to her own child shows how absolutely furious she was with me. I guessed she would be sulking about my wayward insubordination, and her resentment would likely last not just for weeks or months, but possibly go into years. I knew she'd never ever forgive me for disappointing her so much, because I'd rarely let her down. It was when I began waitressing tables that I met Hilda. We became the very best of friends, as her lamentable story was not dissimilar to my own. She had also flunked her grades in college, and had bitterly disillusioned her parochial parents, who were dogmatically uncompromising and intolerant towards her failings, and had contemptuously tossed her out of their home, along with the dirty bathwater, saying they never wanted to see her again. I think my friendship with Hilda had been born from sharing the melancholia of a common predicament, where our bigoted mothers had chosen to refuse us forgiveness or an opportunity to redeem ourselves. Ostensibly, we had succeeded in being college dropouts that had offended and disgraced our mothers. This seemed to solidify the bond that was between the two of us, so we became close, both of us commiserating with each other for the unfortunate state of affairs that we were both facing. I think we both regretted making such a mess of things, but it was far too late for us to be crying over spilt milk. "They're supposed to love us unconditionally, our parents," Hilda vented. "We messed up, yes we did, but they should be forgiving us, should they not? And at the very least give us a second chance. I mean, we're young. We're inclined to make mistakes. It happens. Big deal." "Forgiving?" I said in a mock laugh. "Are you kidding me, Hilda? My toffee-nosed, insular, narrow-minded mother will never forgive me." So there Hilda was this morning, at a very disagreeable hour, ruthlessly tugging the sheets off my bed in order to get me to wake up. I could see through half-open eyes, a crack in the shabby curtains, that there was a dim light glinting through the bedroom, suggesting it wasn't even 5 a.m. yet. What on earth was Hilda doing? She knew well enough that I needed my beauty sleep. Why would she not respect that? I certainly didn't want to be getting up at this crazy, uncongenial hour. I had enough late nights on my repertoire, working as a waitress, to all hours of the night. Hilda was the free-spirited, nonconformist type. Everything about her was bohemian and avant-garde. She loved to surf the second-hand clothes stores for clothes from the 60s, 70s, and even 80s. She didn't dress like regular folk, and shunned modern fashion trends and traditions, much like the punk rockers did in the early 80s, which I always admired. She liked to rebel on the dictates of our modern society by being controversially different, but she always looked stunning, no matter what she wore, and was in her way a bit of a trendsetter. Without even really knowing it, people would walk past her in the street. They'd give her an approving, rather curious second glance. She had feminine-looking flowery tattoos on her arms that made her look like she was wearing long sleeves in a lacy fabric. The trouble with Hilda was that she could become excitable and rambunctious, like a Jack Russell Terrier, when it gets its teeth into a fluffy toy that you cannot pull away from it unless you embrace a tug-of-war. This morning Hilda was like that. I could pick up the feverish excitement in the air as she tried to raise me from my slumber, which I suspect was a little like resurrecting the dead. "Wake up, lazy bones! Get up!" she said, shaking me vigorously. "I've brewed us some coffee in the kitchen. Get up!" "What time is it?" I groaned obsequiously, wishing that my annoying friend would just go away, leave me alone, and let me sleep in peace. "It's 5:10, said Hilda stubbornly. "Now are you going to get up, or do I need to throw a bucket of ice-cold water over your face?" "Hilda, I don't know what your problem is, but I don't want to get up now. I'm tired. Can't you see it? I just need to sleep in. Please, just leave me alone. I'll talk to you later. Just leave me be, will you?" "All right," said Hilda firmly. "I'm going to get that bucket of ice-cold water right now." It was the threat of the ice-cold water being flung across my face that finally made me agree to get up. All right, don't do it. I'm getting up." I knew that Hilda did not dish out idle threats lightly. If she was suggesting she would throw ice-cold water over me, then there was only one guarantee: it would almost certainly happen. I reluctantly climbed out of bed with bleary eyes, groaning under my breath and muttering about how bitterly unfair it was to be woken up so unreasonably early like this. Hilda promptly escorted me by dragging me by the hand to our tiny kitchenette, which was not big enough to even swing a cat. Before I knew it, she was pushing me down on a seat at the breakfast nook, which was an ancient relic from the early 70s, and some of the stuffing was bursting through the open leather. Hilda thrust a mug of steaming coffee in my hand. Then, like Mary Poppins, she slid her body into the seat opposite mine, grinning at me with such a wide, sunny smile. It was obtrusively blinding at this early hour of the morning. I almost had to raise my hands to block out the glare. I could do well without this frisky, high-energy enthusiasm at this early hour of the morning, when I was still trying to find my bearings, after having been discourteously thrown out of bed by Hilda. "So what do you think?" asked Hilda excitedly. "What do you think, Iris?" "Think about what?" I asked in a grumble, warming my hands on the coffee cup and taking a sip. The stimulating effects of the caffeine seemed to pep me up a little. "About Sandra Benjamin's talk last night, silly. Wasn't it incredible? They say she's a millionaire many times over. She's only 25 years old. She lives in incredible style. She has a helipad on her vast property. She owns a Tesla, a Rolls-Royce, a Bentley, and a Jaguar. She wears the most stunning designer clothes. She owns 2 silky Afghan hounds. She goes to all these incredible locations on her holidays, frequented by the rich and famous, like the Hamptons in New York, Carmel by the Sea, Cannes in France, and Aspen for her skiing holidays. She's a self-made millionaire, Iris. She has absolutely everything that money could possibly buy. She lives like a prima donna at such a young age. Can you imagine?" I know, I grumbled. "I was there last night with you, wasn't I, at the talk? I heard it all, during her long, self-indulgent, boastful spiel last night, which was way over the top if you ask me. She was flaunting it all, as if she was all that. 'Hello, everybody, look at me. Aren't I so wonderful?' I don't appreciate people like that, Hilda. They think they're superior to everybody else, because they made it big, because they're so wealthy. Big deal, if you ask me." "Didn't you hear what she said, Iris? Or were you not listening?" asked Hilda accusingly. "You weren't, were you?" she sighed. "So typical of you. I bet you thought the woman was talking bull, but I promise you she wasn't, Iris. She said if we project to the universe exactly what we want, we can have it. Like if you visualize driving and owning a Tesla car. It simply has to come into your life. But we're not allowed to doubt. Don't you see what this means, Iris? We can change our lives in Harry Potter style, without even waving a magic wand. And the magic wand in question is our minds, Iris, is our visualization, our ability to imagine. Iris, we can get out of this dreadful dump, move somewhere beautiful, imagine it," she said, her eyes dancing in excitement. "I'd love to tell Mr. Spindley to go and suck eggs, and that we're done with this crappy apartment of his, and his pathetic excuses as to why he won't fix the block toilet, or exterminate the rats in this building. Do you know I found some rat droppings on the dustbin here in the kitchen the other day? The problem with the rats is getting way out of control. I think we should go to Health and Safety and report Mr. Spindley. The problem's getting out of hand." "That's a very silly idea, Hilda, and you know it. If that happens, this whole building will be closed down and we'll be kicked out. And then where will we go?" I groaned. Much as I loved Hilda, her insufferable optimism about Sandra Benjamin and her unorthodox approach to changing your life was making me nauseously sick to my stomach. I certainly didn't buy into this nonsense for even a moment. If it was so easy, everybody in the world would be buying a yacht in Monaco or sipping champagne cocktails in the Caribbean. "Look, Hilda, I hate to burst your bubble. You might have been impressed by Sandra Benjamin's talk, but I was not. Everything she acquired was just by luck and by knowing the right people and having the right contacts. It really is as simple as that. Besides anything else, she grew up in a privileged lifestyle. She went to the best schools that money could buy. She didn't care to mention that, did she, in her speech? How very convenient, if you ask me. Her father is a self-made millionaire, so it's blindingly obvious things are much more accessible to people like her than to most people. She's one of those annoying people that touches everything apart from the food that she eats, and it turns to gold. She got lucky, that's all. She was born to privilege. Now she's putting it all down to some kind of masterful projection. That's exactly what she wants you to believe, Hilda, I said scathingly. I'm sure any multi-billionaire is going to say the very same thing. Oh, believe yourself rich, and your world will transform before your very eyes, becoming like one of those machines in a casino that regurgitates money. Meanwhile, to follow my advice, buy all my books and my podcasts so that I get much richer in the process. I'm telling you, Hilda, it doesn't work like this. When I was living at home under my mother's stringent rules, I promise you, I would endlessly visualize leaving home and buying a stunning apartment somewhere and having a perfect paying job as a successful doctor. I imagined myself living by the beach somewhere, a carefree lifestyle, but it never happened for me, never. And believe me, I did visualize everything hundreds of times over, but it never happened. But maybe you weren't projecting properly, Hilda insisted. You were doing it all wrong. We are going to do some meditating and visualizing together. It's going to be fun. If we make it a joint exercise, for a start we can imagine leaving this horrible place, finding somewhere else to live, somewhere a whole lot better than this nondescript building. Anything's got to be better than this morose place. Needless to say, against all the odds, me and Hilda didn't have to do very much imagining, as the very next day Mr. Spindley was knocking at our door. I knew it was him, as the stinking smell of cigarettes gave the game away, and it made me wheeze. I opened the door and a cloud of smoke wafted straight into our apartment. Mr. Spindley had a cigarette dangling from his jaundiced, nicotine-stained fingers. I'd never seen Mr. Spindley looking so triumphant before. There was a cocky arrogance to his swagger this morning, as if he'd just won a sizable fortune on the horses. If you were to describe Mr. Spindley in feline terms, you would definitely say that he looked like the cat who'd got all the cream. And certainly if he had had a tail, it would definitely be swishing contentedly. "Hello, Mr. Spindley," I said dryly. "For what do we owe this unexpected pleasure? Our rent isn't due for another 3 weeks or so. Why are you here? Oh, don't tell me. Are you going to fix our block toilet? Now that would be a first," I said sarcastically. Mr. Spindley took a long drag from his Marlborough cigarette, and seemed to take great delight in blowing yet more billows of his white smoke directly into my face, so that my eyes began to water, and I began to sneeze. "I'm here to tell the both of you that you've got a month to pack up your things and get out," he said, fixing his steely gaze on me. And then Hilda, who was staring at him with a rather strange expression on her face that I could not figure out. It was not common for Hilda to be lost for words, but it seemed as if her tongue was tied this morning, for reasons unknown. "I don't understand," I stammered. "We've been paying our rent vigilantly. We've even made some improvements around here. We're the perfect tenants, Mr. Spindley. Why would you want us out like this?" "It's nothing personal," said Mr. Spindley. "And you're right, I've had worse tenants than the both of you. But you don't half complain a lot, so maybe you'll be glad to get out of here. I never understood why you wanted to stay on here anyway, if you had so much to complain about. Most people are more grateful than the both of you are. I mean, look at Dick. He's the best tenant I've ever had. If something was broken, he fixed it himself. He's never called on me to fix any of his problems for him." "It's not that hard to understand, Mr. Spindley, why we've stayed in this dump for so long," I said disparagingly. "Isn't everything in life always about money? Maybe not to you, Mr. Spindley. You're probably so wealthy you don't know what it's like to count the pennies. I hate some rich people for that very reason, as they have absolutely no idea what it's like to struggle. My mother's sister is so rich she throws out perfectly good food, and I abhor the waste. I see these kind of extravagant, wasteful people at the restaurant all the time, throwing around their money indiscriminately, as if it's confetti. The rent here is affordable, Mr. Spindley. Surely you can appreciate that. We like it here for that very reason, even if this grubby apartment looks like something the bowels of hell regurgitated."
"Oh, steady. That's a little harsh, isn't it?"
said Mr. Spindley, his eyes growing wide with my abrasive description of his apartment block. I dare say he'd heard it being described negatively before, but my words had thrown him off his perch.
"These apartments aren't that bad,"
he said defensively. I put my hands defiantly on my hips. "Why are you making us leave, Mr. Spindley?" I challenged him. "You can't do that. We're model tenants. We really need to stay. We can't afford anywhere else."
"It's nothing personal. I'm asking you to leave because I'm selling up, that's why. You won't have a choice in the matter, I'm afraid. If you must know, I stood my ground against that bloody-minded property developer who's been hassling me for years. Finally, the man has agreed to give me my asking price. They're going to be bulldozing this high-rise apartment, bringing up a modern state-of-the-art development in its place, I'm told, that blends in perfectly with the scenery here. Apparently there have been lots of complaints from residents in the area about this apartment block being a blight on the landscape. Can you believe that? Some people can be so goddamned rude. No respect. I'll have you know this place was in the height of fashion in the early 70s. But some people make it their life's mission to be offensive and unkind in their words," he said, looking at me scathingly. I think he included me in that projection. "So I think it's a very big pity that they're bringing it down, if you ask me. This is history, you know, being turned into ashes. Historic buildings should be preserved. It's a criminal offence to take them down, if you ask me." "Mr. Spindley, this is not a historic building, I'll have you know. It's not like one of those beautiful brownstone apartments. There's nothing classic about this architecture. This building development is hideous. And even in the 70s, I doubt it was remotely cool. The building is hideously ugly. And it is a blight on the landscape. I'm sorry, but it is." "I'm very sorry to hear you say that about this apartment block. I'll have you know I've always thought the building rather attractive. The grey looks good against the blue sky. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news and to have to ask you to leave like this," said Mr. Spindley. "But you do have 3 weeks advance notice. I'm sure you appreciate I can't turn a lucrative offer away like this. All the money is going to help me in my retirement, providing ample funds for that wife of mine to be pampered within an inch of her life. That'll keep her happy. And you know the saying, happy life, happy wife."
When Mr. Spindley left, Hilda appeared to be jumping up and down like a 3-year-old toddler on a sugar high. "It's working!" she said excitedly. "Don't you see, Iris, it's working! I've been visualizing us leaving this dump, and now we are!" I groaned. "Yes, we're leaving, Hilda. I hope you're happy now. You got exactly what you wanted. But where is the gold bullion that we desperately need to lead us to the new yacht that our visualization obviously purchased for us in the Mediterranean? Where is it?" I said sarcastically. To say I felt annoyed with Hilda was an understatement, but I had no idea what was about to unfold over the next few days that I'd never seen coming in a month of Sundays, nor did I know my parents had been keeping a secret from me for years that was about to explode in my face. It was on a Friday morning. I was doing a waitressing shift with Hilda later in the evening. It was lunchtime, and I needed to do some grocery shopping to stock up our beleaguered fridge that contained only a mouldy block of cheese and some withered-looking vegetables that were easily on the turn. I like to shop at the West Side Market in Manhattan, which is my absolute favourite place to buy groceries. The market is situated between 97th and 98th Street. I like the variety of stuff they have on offer there, the vast range of fabulous food choices. As I was piling up my basket with groceries, a stick of French bread, some sliced pastrami, a couple of tins of tuna, and a box of cornflakes, I happened to notice an older, well-dressed woman with a stylish haircut,
was giving me a questioningly long, hard look, almost as if in some way I looked familiar to her. I hated being stared at obtrusively by strangers. It made me feel awkwardly uncomfortable, so I hastily looked away. I was standing at the salad bar, looking at a vast range of choices at my disposal. I was wondering what olives I should select, when I felt a sharp tap on my back. I turned around, only to see the woman I'd seen moments before, apparently staring at me, now standing a foot away from me. I noticed that close up she looked oddly familiar, but I couldn't for the life of me place her. Where did I know her from? I couldn't be sure. The woman looked to be in her mid-70s, early 80s. Her hair was dyed a mixture of attractive auburn shades that was rather becoming on her pixie face. It was cut in short crop layers. She had been rather heavy-handed, with a weeping dark kohl under her hazel eyes, which were feathered by many fine lines, and her scarlet lipstick bled into the deep crevices on her lips, easily accentuating her age. I suspected she'd had some cosmetic procedures on her face, probably enjoying the benefits of Botox injectables to hold back the years, as she had an expression of permanent surprise on her face. She was wearing an elegant pair of white trousers that flared at the bottom, a clingy leopard print top, a gold belt, along with a very sensible pair of flat leather court shoes with an elegant buckle. "I'm so sorry to bother you, dear, but you're not Iris, are you? Iris Carrington." "The very same," I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks, as it was embarrassing not to know this woman. I wondered if she was one of our customers at the restaurant where I waitressed. I didn't know many women of her generation, so I felt rather awkward and self-conscious trying to place her. But if she did frequent our restaurant, surely I'd recognize her then. "Dear me," said the woman, waving a dismissive hand around in front of her face. "I hardly expect you to remember me, dear. The last time I saw you was when you were 8 years old. A sweet little thing you were." "You recognize me from when I was 8 years old?" I asked agog. "That's incredulous." "Well, your family resemblance is very distinctive, dear, so I never forget a face, you know." I was amazed that someone could recognize me from when I was only 8 years old. "Sorry," I said, narrowing my eyes inquisitively, as I studied the woman closely. "I still can't place you." "Oh, dear me, where on earth are my manners? I'm Judy Manning, of course." "Judy Manning?" I said out loud. Why did the name sound so familiar? I knew I'd heard it before, from a long way in the past. "Yes, I was your great-aunt Paula's very best friend." "Your great-aunt Paula, you do remember her, don't you? I know it was a long time ago for you. But, oh my word, what a wonderful woman she was. What a spirited soul. She loved the bones of you, she did, you know. She described you as the daughter she never ever had. If that woman could have had children, she would have chosen you by design. Of that I am most sure." "Oh, yes, I do remember you. You haven't changed that much." "Well, I could say the very same about you, although, of course, you are significantly older. But the resemblance you bear to your great-aunt Paula is uncanny." When I was 8, I had regularly stayed at Great-aunt Paula's lavender-coloured doll's house in Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia. I remember that very well. It was a beautiful place. I used to love the extensive property, with its gloriously pretty view over the lake, and all the groves of ancient trees that fringed its borders. "Oh, dear, don't tell me, love, that you sold the place," said Judy, looking at me with a sorrowful flicker in her eyes. "You didn't, did you? I suppose I can't blame you for that. Your great-aunt would have been disappointed, I hasten to say. She wanted you to have left that place not only to your children, but to your children's children. Never mind, it can't be helped. So tell me, dear, how's your mother doing these days? If I remember rightly, she was a very punctilious, particular woman. I hasten to say your great-aunt Paula found her a tad intimidating when your mother came to visit. Everything had to be absolutely perfect with your mother. Doilies on the tea tray. Your mother was insistent about using cubed sugar, and there had to be Earl Grey tea brewing in the teapot. Your mother would say that any other tea was for plebs. She was quite the snob. Oh dear me, I'm going on and on. I'm a bit garrulous at times, and I don't mean to be rude. You've gone awfully pale. I hope I haven't offended you, my dear. Me and my big mouth. I must apologize.
Sorry, I said. Say that again. What do you mean, did I sell Great-Aunt Paula's house in Nova Scotia? What on earth are you talking about?
Well, your great-aunt signed over the property to you, didn't she? But your mother was to care for it until she handed over the deeds to you when you became 21, which I assume she did. Your aunt wisely put her home in your name, under the short-term supervision of your mother, to avoid all the after-death taxes you obviously get. She wanted you to have it. Your great-aunt Paula gave your mother the deeds of the place before she died. But it's legally in your name. Remember, your great-aunt was so happy to leave the place to you, along with all the contents. She said you loved her house.
Oh, yes, I lied. I remember. It's just I've not been back to the place for years.
But why don't you live there, then? Asked Judy. I mean, Nova Scotia. What a fabulously beautiful place to live. Unless, of course, you do have to live here. But it doesn't get better than that. And you, I assume, have dual citizenship, like your mother does. I mean, you were born in Canada, were you not?
That's right, I was, I said.
Well, there you go. I'm awfully relieved you didn't sell the place. It would have been an awful pity. If you don't intend to live there, maybe you should let it out to tenants. It could bring in a nice income for you and help you keep the place well maintained.
You make a good point there, Mrs. Manning. I'll think about it long and hard.
Please do, my dear. And don't call me Mrs. Manning. Judy will do very nicely. I cannot believe the luck of it, bumping into you like this. What were the chances of that happening? It's a small world, let me tell you. It's really good seeing you, my dear. What a blast from the past. I don't even come here often. Once or twice a year, if the truth be told. I live on the other side, you see. But I go back to Canada every couple of years. I miss it a lot, you know. You know what they say, no place like home. And Nova Scotia, it's the very best.
Judy walked away, waving a hand at me, heading towards the bakery. I dropped my basket and all the food that I'd intended to buy. The shopping could wait. I was stunned by Mrs. Judy Manning's revelations. Could they really be true? Could Great-Aunt Paula have left her house in Nova Scotia to me? My mother was sitting on the deeds to my property that I knew nothing about. I was 25 years old now. Great-Aunt Paula had died when I was 10. So my mother had been sitting on the deeds for that property for over 15 years. It was sickening. Why did I know nothing about this? Why had my mother not given me the deeds to Great-Aunt Paula's lavender house a long, long time ago? I could feel the anger rise up in my belly. I was soon to be homeless when Mr. Spindley finally got his way and kicked us out of the property. I had been paying my hard earnings to keep his shoddy roof over my head, here in Manhattan. And all the time I was a woman of property, a woman of means. I could have potentially remortgaged Great-Aunt Paula's house to get myself back on my feet again, or rented it out to tenants. But none of that had happened, thanks to my mother's selfishness. How dare my parents keep this from me? My mother certainly had some explaining to do. Great-Aunt Paula had been dead for a long time, and her house, Purple Rain, had been laying empty, and maybe now it was in a bad state of repair, having been abandoned for so long. How could my parents do this to me? I was furious. Wow, it's getting steamy, isn't it? We're about to find out what's going to happen there. But I've got a feeling that this girl, Iris, is going to go to Nova Scotia, and I can only imagine what might happen there. So I'm looking forward to you joining me for the next 2 parts of this exciting story, and you really don't want to miss it because it's not what you're expecting. Until next time, goodbye and good night.